In our last episode, we had just completed exploring L'Enfant Plaza, where we found the Capital Post newspaper and read some very interesting stories from before the war. But we also uncovered a mystery. On an eastern residential road of L'Enfant Plaza, close to the L'Enfant Plaza South Metro station, which leads to the irradiated metro, we found a grave dug on the other side of a garden wall. Inside the grave, we found a small store of goods and search party log number 1. The log reads, "First time I've thought to update the log since leaving Canterbury. Guard at the Citadel wouldn't let us in, but said a scribe had given Cheryl the medicine at least 2 weeks ago and sent her along to the Rangers. From the sounds of it, Miles didn't make it as far as the Citadel. Damn shame. He was a good mutt." Still no sign of Cheryl. Rumors about the city are true. Place is a death trap. Mutants and psychos at every turn. Cheryl's tough enough, but I'm worried, especially with Miles missing. Emmett just about went to pieces the first time we ran into a centaur. We should be able to reach the ranger compound before sundown tomorrow. Kaya scouted ahead, and it looks like the coast is clear for now. With any luck, Cheryl's holed up with them, and we can start back home. Here lies Henry. Muty saw him going for water in the street. There was nothing we could do to help him. If anybody else has come looking for us, we'll leave word with the Rangers. The author of this note does not leave his name, but we know the names of his traveling companions. He and 2 other men named Emmett and Henry were traveling with a woman named Kaya in search of a missing person named Cheryl. Cheryl left with her dog Miles many weeks ago. We don't know why this unnamed author became worried, but he did, and he tracked her down to the Citadel. But there he learned that the Brotherhood of Steel had given Cheryl some medicine. He refers to it as the medicine, giving us the impression that Cheryl had some sort of pre-existing condition, a sickness that the author was well aware of. Perhaps it was this sickness that compelled Cheryl to leave the safety of Canterbury, to head off into the wasteland to find a cure. And it was also at the Citadel that the unnamed author learned that Cheryl's dog Miles had died. But the Brotherhood had referred Cheryl to Reilly's Rangers. We remember Reilly's Rangers from the dedicated video I made about them, which you can watch here. It looks like this unnamed author and his band of travelers were making their way to the Ranger compound when they ran into a gang of super mutants here in L'Enfant Plaza. And it was here that one of their members, Henry, died. But this was search log number 1, which implies that there might be a search log number 2. And the log gave us a great clue for where we can search next. This party was headed to the Ranger compound. It's a tough fight to get to the Ranger compound, unless we've already fought our way here. If we have, then to find it, we find the spray-painted insignia of 2 sabers crossed over a 4-leaf clover that points us towards the compound. After heading through a building, we see a huge statue of a man inside of a circle, and to the left of it, we find Reilly's Rangers painted on a ruin. This brings us to a door, which leads to the compound. We find the next clue when reading the nearby Ranger compound outer terminal. Here we find a new note that we didn't see the last time we were here. Perhaps this means that the search party arrived after we discovered this place. The name of the note is Notice from Canterbury Search Party. Bad news. The Rangers haven't seen Cheryl, and they've got troubles of their own. Muty's been snatching people left and right. Reilly's men are going to keep an eye out around here. They suggested we head to the western ruins, across the river, and search there. So I guess that's what we'll do. Damn it, sis. Why didn't you just wait for us? Oh no. So Cheryl is the sister of this unnamed author. But she never made it to the Ranger compound. That means she either got lost, killed, or stopped somewhere between the Citadel and this compound, but that's a huge swath of ruins. Where do we even begin? It's like finding a needle in a haystack. Well, for some reason, the Rangers here thought that the Canterbury Search Party would have a better time finding Cheryl if they head back across the river towards the western ruins. Well, just because they were heading that way doesn't mean that they made it. But we can deduce a few things. The first is that they likely had to find a bridge to cross the river. It's far too irradiated for them to simply wade across, so perhaps we'll stumble upon the party if we head for the nearest bridge. After winding our way through the ruined metro tunnels of DC until we arrive back on the western bank of the Potomac, we can pass Dukov's place, which I covered in my video, You Gotta Shoot Him in the Head, which you can watch here, and travel south. Off in the distance, we see a still intact, huge bridge, a likely destination that the Canterbury search party used to ford the river. But just as we come around the corner of this building, we stumble upon a rather festive raider camp.
Hey. Yeah!
Festive, I suppose, because there's a big potted tree in the middle of the camp decorated with Christmas lights. You have to see it at night to truly appreciate it. Even if we kill the raiders here at the camp, new ones arrive every 3 days. So even if we discover it once, which I did when I did my video on Dukov's place, we have to continually clear it. There are a few containers in here to loot, most of which I've already looted, and there's one magazine, a copy of Duck and Cover, on the round side table between the 2 bunk beds. But I found something that I missed the last time I was here, a very hard-locked ammunition box, which I likely skipped because I didn't have the lockpicking skill necessary to pick it at that time, but I do now. After looting the festive raider camp, we can head out and take the nearby road south towards the bridge. As we head that way, oh no, we discover another grave. We can only hope that this wasn't from the search party, but when we dig it up, we find a small store of goods and search party log number 3. Has to be a month gone since we was at the Citadel. Tracking mutants in this city is no easy job. Helps to have mentats keep everyone focused, but we still have to be careful. These green bastards seem like they're on the move. You never hear them talk about it, but they're looking for something. And people. Anyone they can get their hands on. Tracking muties through the city isn't the hard part. They're good with metal, always ripping up junkers and building crap out of the bits. Just follow their freak sculpture shows. The hard part is staying hidden. Emmett took a bad cut on his leg from one of the spikes. Took 2 shirts to stop the bleeding. I hope these freaks can't smell blood. We're headed towards the Citadel. Maybe they'll help us patch him up. It's a relief to be outside the city for a day. We'll use the bridge and cross over to check beyond the ruins on the west side. We can't hold out here much longer. I can't just give up on Cheryl, but I might not end up having a choice. Emmett's in a bad shape. We'll wait to cross the bridge until tomorrow. Rest in peace, Emmett. Poor kid left Canterbury so fresh. I didn't want him along, but he really came into his own these past few weeks. He died in the night. There's no point bothering those pricks at the Citadel now. We're headed into the city tomorrow. So it was part of the same party. And again, our unnamed author lost another member. Henry at L'Enfant Plaza, and Emmett here by the bridge. That leaves only Kyla left in his party. And they still haven't found Cheryl, his sister. It sounds as if they've concluded that Cheryl was taken by super mutants, because they're tracking super mutants who are searching for something and moving west. And here's where it gets tricky, because the next clue is a bit vague. In the second to last paragraph, we'll learn that they had planned to go back to the Citadel to get medicine for Emmett, but then Emmett died. He ends by saying that now that Emmett's dead, they no longer need to go back to the Citadel. He says, we'll head into the city tomorrow. But he can't mean downtown DC, because that's just where he came from. And the last clue he had about Cheryl's whereabouts, whom he's still searching for, was from the Rangers, who said that she might be on the west side of the Potomac. Emmett's grave is on the east side of the Potomac, which leads me to believe that the city he's referring to at the end must be towards Greyditch or even Megaton. So to track him down, we'll cross the bridge to the western side of the Potomac. At the other end of the bridge, we turn left to go to the Citadel. Well, we know he didn't go there, so instead, we'll turn right. If we do, we see raiders hanging out at ambush positions beneath some arches near to the bridge, likely there to waylay travelers crossing the bridge to seek help from the Citadel. We can stop their banditry here.
Good riddance. Good riddance.
Once they're dead, we can head up a gravel ramp into the arches, and we see that this is a fully fledged raider camp. We can loot the corpses of the raiders we just killed. There's a trunk to the south, but I looted this a long time ago. I recall it being filled with meager gear, and then a footlocker nearby with booze. We can climb up some stairs to get to the next section, and here we find an average locked safe. I must have come here when my character was really young, if she didn't have high enough lockpicking to pick an average locked safe. But at least it's here for us now, and inside we find a stash of 30 bottle caps and a tidy stash of chems. We find scattered bottle caps on the ground and on a nearby table. We also find 2 bottles of Rad-X and a dose of Psycho on the table. Now, if this all-girl raider gang was here, that means that if the search party came by, they likely avoided the raiders. We don't find any sign of the search party, which means they must have done something to sneak by. Exploring the vicinity of this ambush point, we find a tunnel right next to the bank of the Potomac inside of the Washington Monument and the Statesman Hotel. Did the Canterbury search party travel through here? There's only one way to find out, and that is to lift open the grate to the county sewer main line. Immediately upon the other side, we get spotted by ghouls.
I've got one. I didn't know where that came from.
We see 2 paths ahead, a ramp up to a second level to the north, and a door to the northwest. We'll open the door first. This leads to a small utility room with a staircase going upstairs. At the end of the staircase, we pass through a door to hear a ghoul. Oh, he must be above us, climbing these metal steps.
Over here. Back. What's the matter, huh? Can't stand the sight of your own blood?
Phew. Speaking of blood, gosh, look at that. Must have hit an artery. At the top of these stairs, we see a door to the left and a terminal to the right. Near to the terminal is a little goody nook, and we see a floor safe. To access the floor safe, we can hack into the average locked wall terminal, where we don't find any lore, but we do find an option to disengage the floor safe lock. Inside, we find a stash of caps, a little bit of pre-war money, and a whiskey. We can then loot the goody nook. We find a hunting rifle lying against an ammunition box filled with shotgun shells. There's a tin of .32 caliber rounds. On the nearby shelf, we find a red toolbox and other scrap. There's a first aid box with stim packs, and then on the bottom level of the left shelf, we find an ammo box with 10mm ammunition. That's it for this goody nook. So to exit this room, we can go through the northwestern door. This leads us out to another sewer tunnel, and we see that it splits. A path to the northwest, and then a path down to the east. We see that the path down to the east simply leads us back to where we killed those ghouls. There's the grate we entered through over there. This means the only way to proceed is to go back up this ramp and to take the path to the northwest. We find this path flooded with sickly green irradiated water, and we see a rad roach. There is light pouring through an open door to the left. Oh!
Oh, where that came from?
And another rad roach behind us. Inside that closet, we see that a ghoul was feeding on the corpse of a mercenary. Could this be part of the Canterbury search party? Well, no, I don't think so. He's simply named Mercenary, and we don't find any notes on his corpse. On the top level of the middle shelf, we find an easy-locked ammo canister, and that's about it. So heading out, we can continue along the path to the east. We find a fork, but the northern path is blocked with rubble, so to continue we go down into the east. Here we find the skeleton of a man clutching a 10mm pistol, and near to his hand is a box of 10mm rounds and a stim pack. At the bottom we find another rad roach. We see another junction, but the right path is blocked, so we'll turn left, travel up a ramp, and kill another rad roach. But this path is also blocked, so we turn right to find another path before us blocked, but a path opens up to a door to the north. To open the door, we toggle the switch on the wall. And as soon as we enter, more ghouls above us. Well, before we go up the stairs, I want to see what's down this path to the northeast. The staircase leads us down to a bottom floor where we can kill a rad roach. We see a skeleton by some generators. Up!
Here. Where? Keep firing.
Heading back to the skeleton, we find a box of shotgun shells. There's a thick mist hovering over some stagnant water in the middle of this room. Traveling around it first, we find a path to the north. This brings us down a hallway, which then turns south. This leads us to a room where we find a bunch of leaking pipes, and the room is thick with a visible gas. I'll go ahead and ignite this before we enter the room. Oh, sorry, dog meat. Didn't realize you were standing so close. Oh, he did not like that. With the gas gone, we can enter a room. We see that we killed a rad roach by igniting the gas, but this room is otherwise empty. It just circles around back to those big pools of stagnant green water. I didn't want to jump in there, but for the sake of being thorough, I went ahead and jumped in. The water is surprisingly deep. Far deeper than I thought it was going to be, and it is a toxic green color. But there's nothing else here, so leaping out, we can head back up the stairs, past the door, and then head up some stairs to the next level. There's a big hole in this floor, and we see another floor above us, but we don't see any ghouls, so risking our light, we can turn left. We find the staircase up to the next floor, but we want to explore this one first. So turning north, we can head down the path and round the perimeter of this room until we find a door to the east. And here we find a ghoul.
That's the end of that.
Okay, this is getting ridiculous. How am I supposed to not kill my companions if they can simply teleport to the enemy while I'm shooting at it? Dogmeat just appeared out of the ether to attack the ghoul. What the heck? And where was that guy? Hiding on the other side of the wall, but if so, why didn't he attack earlier? Man, there's some sort of crazy magic in this place. After looting the corpses, we can go back to the middle of this room. We see that a skeleton on the floor was clutching a combat knife. Turning to the shelves to the east, we can unlock a very easy locked ammo canister on the bottom of the middle shelf. But while we explore this shelf, we get rushed from behind. Whew, those Reavers are tough. Took 6 shots point blank from my alien captain's sidearm, and he still wasn't dead. Back inside the room, we can continue to loot the shelves. We find a very easy locked ammo canister on the top of the left shelf against the cement pillar, and then turning around we find another ammo box at the top of the leftmost shelf here. There's a big stack of items in the eastern corner. I moved it all away because I saw some toolboxes back there, but sadly I was not rewarded for my efforts. Nothing interesting in either of the toolboxes, and none of the wooden boxes had anything, which was a bummer. But that means this level is explored, so we can head out, round the perimeter of this room until we find that staircase that leads to the 4th floor. At the very top, we see a path going off to the northeast, but rounding a corner, we see a path to the west. We see that the ledge is gated off with a barbed wire fence, perhaps to keep people from falling, and then we see a door to the west. Oh, but it says this door is activated elsewhere. It's then we notice that this fence actually has a gate. The gate is locked with an easy lock. After picking it, we find a little island in the middle of this room with a desk and a terminal. On the desk, we find a big book of science and 2 pre-war books. That's 200 caps from Scribe Yearling. The terminal is labeled Sewer Management Access Computer. Sewer Management welcomes you. Please insert a command. We find 3 options. Water treatment status, but there's a central error. System is non-functional. Activate the storage door. Oh, that one worked. And then purge sewage overflow. But we trigger a local error. Purge system non-functional. As we back out, the door to the west opens. Inside, 3 rad roaches charge us. I saw one run out. I just killed the second. Where's the third? Did I accidentally kill 3 with that one slice? Well, heading back inside, we can loot an ammunition box on the shelf to the northwest. There's a blood pack on the top of this shelf. Then we find a skeleton in the far northwestern corner, and he's clutching a dose of jet. On a shelf to the west, we find a first aid kit. On the top of the shelf, a tin of .32 caliber rounds. And on the shelf next to this, a first aid box on the bottom with a dose of jet, and then a whole bunch of conductors and other scrap, with some shotgun shells on the second to the top shelf. The third and final shelf has an ammunition box on the very bottom, and that's it for the storage room. Heading out. Oh, there he is.
Yeah? You want some of this?
I think I got all 3. Retracing our steps, we can now continue to the northeast. This leads to a utility door to the east. Opening the door brings us to a hallway that opens through another utility door to the north. And this brings us back to the sewer tunnels. But we see a puddle of blood and 2 large bloody handprints on the ground. I hope that's not from any of the search party members. We can go left or right. Heading right, we see that this is just a dead end and a loop. It loops around back to the left path. So continuing down the left path, we can kill a radroach.
Help me.
And then pass a construction light to follow the path down to the west. At the end, we see a ghoul. One shot. Oh, there's another. Ooh, is that a seizure? Well, I think I found his cure. Oh, one more. Oh, come on. There we go. Heading into this nook with the fire barrel, we can loot a stim pack next to a human skeleton, and then loot the ghouls that we just killed. But this is a dead end, so turning around and heading back to the primary tunnel, we pass a dismembered skeleton in the middle, and then head up the ramp to the top, where we can loot the feral ghoul we sniped. Path to the left is blocked, so instead we'll turn right, rounding a pillar. Oh, 2 more ghouls.
Look out.
Goodness, guys. Can I at least have a chance to kill something? Sharon's magic shotgun might as well be a sniper rifle. We see that these 2 ghouls were feeding on the corpse of a wastelander. Near to her body is a box of 10mm rounds and a frag grenade. On her corpse, we just find a small stash of chems. Continuing forward, the tunnel rounds a corner. We pass a skeleton on the ground near a shopping cart, and here we find a tin of .32 caliber rounds. Rounding the corner to the north.
Can't stand the sight of your own blood.
There, at least I got to do something. The path to the right is blocked with rubble. We see a path to the north with a corpse on the ground. And to the west, we see a path up, and it's booby-trapped with a tripwire. Well, I want to head west, but let's loot this body first. We see that this is the corpse of a mercenary. There's nothing on her body, but she's lying on top of a tin of .32 caliber rounds. But we can't loot this with her body on top of it, so sorry, lady. Hate to disturb the dead, but let's just move you. There we go. All right, turning around, we can snip this tripwire, and then heading up the ramp, we can keep our eyes peeled for what it was attached to. We see a bunch of scrap and junk on the ground, and looking up, we see a fragmentation grenade bouquet. This must have been attached to that tripwire. Directly ahead of us, in front of a stop sign, we see a bear trap. This must mean somebody lives down here. Turning a corner, we find a 4-way junction, and it's decorated with strung lights. In the middle of the path, we see an interesting sight, a shopping cart, a pressure switch, and above it, a hanging girder. I see how this is supposed to work. To trigger this thing, we can push the cart forward. Ooh, devious. I'm glad we saw that coming. With the trap triggered, we can head to the junction. We see 2 doors down the northern path, one against the eastern wall and one against the west. But then turning west, we find another door down this western path. We are warned, do not enter, stop, yield. And near to these signs is a bear trap. Could a member of the Canterbury search party be on the other side of this door flanked by gnomes? There's only one way to find out. Stepping inside, we see trails of blood on the ground. And then...
Found you. Yeah. Good enough. Oh.
Who was this guy? This was a named ghoul named Gallo, and he was wearing... Is that one of those party hats? Well, the last time we saw a party hat like this was in Vault 101 during our birthday party. Wait, I take that back. We found a bunch on Mothership Zeta, too. Looting his corpse, we find a tidy stash of caps, a party hat, a sawed-off shotgun, shotgun shells, and a copy of Tales of a Junktown Jerky Vendor. What was this guy doing here? Was this his home? Well, he's dead now, so we can start looting. He came from behind this wall. We find an ammunition box on the ground beneath a table. And on the table, we find a stash of bottle caps. Turning around, we find a Nuka-Cola Shrine. Looks like Gallo here was a bit of a Nuka-Cola nut, like Sierra Petravita. He has a Nuka-Cola clock on the wall above his bed, a Nuka-Cola lamp, and 4 Nuka-Colas lined up in a row, as well as a couple of Nuka-Cola trucks and a banner. Here we find 2 more pre-war books. That brings us up to 400 caps from Scribe Yearling. After looting 2 packages of darts, we can open a footlocker to find some shotgun shells and Gallo's storage key. I wonder what this is for. We can take advantage of the bed here to sleep for an hour or so, and then heading out from his bed nook back towards the main room, we see a safe next to a table, and upon the table, an easy lock terminal. But here we don't find any lore. Instead, we only find an option to disengage the lock. Inside the safe, we find 1 Nuka-Cola Quantum, his prized possession. There's a grenade box on the ground to the west, and here we find a bit of a bar with another Nuka-Cola sign. There's a box of goods on the table, but even after we shake it out, we don't find much inside, just a bunch of scrap. We can loot a Nuka-Cola machine to get 3 Nuka-Cola, and on the ground, what's this? This guy was keeping pet radroaches. We see 2 radroaches in this cage, and some sort of meat. There's a surgical tray with a bloody blade on top, and blood splatter all over the ground. There's 2 big smudges of blood on the nearby oven. Looks like Gallo was cooking and feeding these radroaches some sort of meat. Well, we can try to let these guys out by opening the cell door. Oh, but they want to stay inside. That's okay. The electricity from my Jingwei shock sword should be able to pass through those walls. Bingo. Even though there's blood on the oven, there's nothing inside but a pilot light. But turning right, oh, we find a dead, dismembered feral ghoul. There are chunks of body parts in this cooler and blood spatter everywhere. And we see that the big bloody trail on the ground leads to this cooler. It looks like Gallo was hunting feral ghouls in these tunnels so he could chop them up and feed them to his pet radroaches. Oh. We find 1 more ammo container on the ground, but that's it for Gallo's room. So what was this guy's story? What was he doing here? Well, the game doesn't tell us any more about him, but thankfully, we find a little bit more lore about this guy in the Fallout 3 official strategy guide. The guide says, quote, recently celebrating his birthday, Gallo invited his 2 favorite gnomes, dressed them in party hats, and carved up a variety of feral ghoul cutlets for the occasion. A mixture of solitude, escaping sewer gas, and a ghoul's lifespan has made Gallo quite mad. The guide also describes him as a cannibal, which means he not only serves ghoul to his cockroaches, but must partake in the feast himself. But now we gotta figure out what his key is for. To do so, we head out the eastern door, which leads us to the path on the other side of his girder trap. We see it triggered to the south. Facing east, we find a door, and we can use Gallo's key to open it. Inside, we find a storage room filled with all sorts of goodies. There's some 10mm rounds on a table, 2 Vault-Tec lunchboxes on a bottom shelf, a Nuka-Cola next to an empty footlocker, a stim pack hiding beneath a baseball bat, some shotgun shells next to some toy cars, a first aid box on the nearby shelf, some Rad-X hiding behind some baseballs, some shotgun shells next to 2 pressure cookers and some medical braces. And then we find a box on the bottom shelf, but it's hard to get out of there. While trying to get this box out of there, I found some mentats beneath some crutches, and I had to loot this leaf blower to get it out of the way before I could move the box. For my efforts, I was rewarded with a stealth boy hiding under the box. Lastly, we can loot 2 bunches of railway spikes in a nearby cubby, and that's it for Gallo's storage room. Well, that leaves 1 path left to go, and that's to retrace our steps until the tunnel turns east, and then at the junction, take the path to the north. Here we pass the body we had to move to loot the ammunition, and we can loot the ghoul we killed here. The tunnel then goes up and ends at a ladder to a sewer station. As soon as we emerge, we get attacked by a scorpion? A scorpion inside a sewer station? We see that the sewer grate is on top of a large cement platform, and we're surrounded by a bunch of metal catwalks. We can kill a few radroaches around, some on the catwalks and some back down on the factory floor. And here we see a teddy bear. Next to this teddy bear is a conveyor belt covered in more teddy bears. Wait a minute, is this a teddy bear factory? That doesn't make any sense at all. Why would we find a teddy bear factory inside a sewer station? At any rate, we can loot all of these teddy bears to give to little Marie in downtown Pittsburgh. We find some of these teddy bears laid out in compromising positions. Ooh, these guys are having a fun night. We've got a bottle of whiskey. Hate to interrupt them. Hopping over the conveyor belt, we find another rad roach in this corner. The conveyor belt then continues on to the west. We find another teddy bear who's had a rough night. This guy's got some medic stabbed into his face, and he's smoking a pack of cigarettes and drinking some vodka. On the other side of the machine, the conveyor belt continues. We can loot more of these guys until we find a teddy bear sitting here holding a Chinese pistol, a frag grenade, and smoking a cigarette. Oh man, maybe this guy's suffering from some sort of PTSD. Dark memories there, teddy bear. The conveyor belt ends to the right, where we can loot another teddy bear, and then leaping through this crack, we can loot the final loop here to get even more teddy bears. Medea will give us 30 caps for each of these teddy bears, meaning that if we loot all of them, we can walk away with 630 caps. It looks like there are two ways out of this room. We'll start by heading up some stairs to the south. Here we see a radio playing. We find a box filled with lead pipes and another with a wrench on the ground. Near to a door, we find two stashes of railway spikes and a pot with some 10mm rounds inside. If we exit through this door to the south, we see that it leads to Grey Ditch. But strangely, on the other side, we don't find ourselves in Grey Ditch. We're close, but we're not in Grey Ditch. Taking a look at our map, we see that we haven't even discovered Grey Ditch. It's still to the southeast of us. But we've traveled quite a ways from the Citadel Bridge. But did we go in the right direction? There was one more door inside the way station, so heading back inside, we can move to the other end of this big room. We see that the conveyor belts were covered in some sort of glass awning, which is really pretty, as is the sunlight through the windows. Nice touch. This room opens to the west. We see a bunch of trash, and if we turn off our light, hey, look at that. I know what that blue glow means. We find a skeleton in a refrigerator holding a Nuka-Cola Quantum. There is an Etotronic on the wall. We can get some sugar bombs to give to Murphy at the Moresty Metro Station. And if we peer behind the fridge, we find a box filled with pre-war money. Turning to the north, we find two boxes here. If we tip over the closest one, we knock out a box of detergent which was concealing a stim pack. On the shelves to the north, we find some darts, and then we just find a bunch of scrap and crafting components. When done, we can exit through the door to the west. Strangely enough, this one says door to Capital Wasteland, not Grey Ditch, even though this door is on the same building. This door points us northwest. We see that we're surrounded by a chain link fence, but there is an opening in the fence to the west. But we haven't found any sign of Cheryl or Cheryl's search party. To continue exploring, we can move off to the north-northwest. Off in the distance, we see a Corvega billboard, and nearby, it's another grave. The grave is located due northwest of the sewer station, which is right there. It's directly northeast of this big, ruined office building with a rounded corner, hiding on the other side of some rocks. Inside the grave, we find a small stash and search party log number 4. Reading it in our Pip-Boy. Found something. Muties have a bunch of folks trussed up in a park nearby. Going to hole up and see what happens. Too risky to check for Cheryl until we know more. Kaya crept down and checked tonight. Cheryl's not there, and most of the people are dead or close to it. Still, gonna keep an eye on them from here a little longer. Bastards are cleverer than they look. They stake people up, which attracts attention. Saw a couple of mercenaries get snatched investigating. One didn't put up much of a fight, so they took him alive. There may be hope for Cheryl yet. The stakes aren't just to attract people. A big old mother came by today, yanked a stiff from one of those spikes, and gnawed every scrap of meat off the bones. Looks like they were waiting for the biggin to pack up. They're on the move. I've got a feeling they'll take these folks to the same place they must have taken my sis. Close call today. Damn fool Brotherhood scout nearly exposed us. The muties got him. Poor kid never had a chance. We're finally clear of the city. Kaya refused to go any further, left to go back to Canterbury. The muties are headed west, and I still aim to find where they're taking these people. It's going to be harder to stay concealed out in the open, but at least I don't have to worry about ghouls crawling all over me all night. So it sounds like they did travel through the sewer. But who is buried here? The author of this note clearly survived, but he says that Kaya left and went back to Canterbury. Henry was buried in grave number 1, and Emmett was buried in grave number 2. The only thing I can think of is that this grave must be the grave of the Brotherhood of Steel's scout the author wrote about in this note. He says that the muties got him. However, in this grave we don't find any power armor, though I suppose the author of the note could have salvaged the power armor. That is the best explanation I have, that a Brotherhood scout is in this grave and the author salvaged his power armor. He ended this one by saying that the mutants headed west and he aims to follow them. But that's not a very good clue. After all, there are a lot of things west. But he did provide us with a few more clues. First, the super mutants he's tracking are trying to lure humans. For what purpose we don't know yet, but they're luring humans using a number of tricks, like sticking people on spikes, which apparently attracts people, which you would think would have the opposite effect, but for some reason mercenaries are drawn to the corpses on spikes. And he mentioned that there was a big ol' mother. Well, that makes me think of a super mutant behemoth. So the author was tracking a group of mutants who were traveling with kidnapped humans, who set traps for other humans, and had a super mutant behemoth with them. Well, we pick up the trail if we head west of this location, west and slightly northwest. We pass Megaton, we pass Vault 101, and we follow the road until we reach the Jury Street Metro Station. From the metro station, we follow the road west. After a little bit, if we veer off the road to the southwest, we see spikes. And hanging from the spikes, super mutant gore bags. Could this be the super mutant camp that our unnamed journal writer was tracking? Creeping forward, we see ruined rail cars off in the distance, and the rooftop of some sort of nearby building, possibly the entrance to a train tunnel. Peering over the ledge, sure enough, we find 2 super mutants.
Help me. You like that? It's gonna blow.
It looks like the coast is clear, so creeping down the ramp from the top of the train tunnel, we can head closer to the camp to loot the super mutant bodies. We see a tipped-over dumpster lying to the west, and lying on the ground in front of it is the body of a man named Manny Coke. On his corpse, we don't find much, just some jet and Rad-X, so we don't know exactly who this is, but we have every indication that Manny Coke here is the unnamed author of the diary entries that have led us to this point. This is confirmed in the Fallout 3 official strategy guide. The guide describes Manny, saying, quote, leader of the Canterbury Commons search party that attempted to locate the whereabouts of a good friend named Cheryl, Manny Coke is the only visible remains of the group. The rest are either buried or chopped into manageable pieces and stored on gore bags. This last line may hint to the fate of Cheryl herself, the person they were all looking for, because we never find her. All we find is Manny here, and 5 human skeletons near to this overturned dumpster. Is one of these skeletons the remains of Cheryl? Or, as the guide suggests, are her pieces currently being stored in a gore bag? As we investigate the dumpster, we see a cage made from shopping carts, and if we open it, another teddy bear that we can save for Marie. But wait a minute, what was this doing here? Is this a trap? Ah! It's the big old mother Manny talked about in his last note. And sure enough, this entire scene was a trap to attract us. After the super mutant is dead, the reward for this quest is on his inventory. Bottle caps, multiple hundreds of ammunition, a mini nuke, a stack of 10 missiles, a missile launcher, and a T-45D power armor helmet. This is a sad and dissatisfying story, but you know, it's something that would happen in a wasteland like this. All these people died because Cheryl was impatient. Instead of waiting for her brother Manny and waiting for the rest of the party, she left Canterbury Commons for whatever reason. Maybe it was to go get medicine, on her own with only her dog as company. And because of that recklessness, her dog, her brother, and 2 of her friends died. She could have prevented that by simply waiting. All she had to do was wait, but because she couldn't, she now exists as bloody chunks hanging in a gore bag. And that is the full story of the Canterbury Search Party and Gallo the Crazed Birthday Ghoul. Did you encounter these stories in your gameplay? Did you find all of the graves and all of the notes? Let me know in the comments section below. A fair bit of warning before you try to do this in your own game, this quest is bugged. Even though the experience is supposed to go as I played it in this video, sometimes Manny's corpse doesn't spawn. Or sometimes he spawns while he's still alive, and if he does, he's hostile to the lone wanderer. This is due to a broken script for this quest. The graves in the notes aren't supposed to trigger until you've found the previous ones, but for some reason there's a broken script that sometimes doesn't trigger Manny correctly. I had to play through this a number of times before I finally got it to work. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Sunday. I have a brand new shirt in the shop if you're interested. The game was rigged from the start. It features a familiar man in his daisy suit holding up a certain valuable poker chip. We see his distinctive gun and the words, "The game was rigged from the start." This design comes on shirts in a variety of both men's and women's sizes and in a wide array of colors. You can find it on a bunch of other products too. Smartphone cases, mugs, prints, posters, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. I'm gearing up for 2 new lore series on my channel. One is a Fallout 4 series and one is a New Vegas series. I've got the intro music already composed, so it's just a matter of sitting down and shooting the footage before I put them all together for you. It'll be about a week or 2 before I have it ready, but it's something to look forward to, so stay tuned for that. I take Sundays off, which means I'm not going to have a video for you on Monday, but never fear, I'll have a brand new video for you on Tuesday morning, and I'll see you then with a brand new episode.